Are you considering a home purchase here in beautiful Florida? Well, if so, there are some critical things that I think you need to be aware of before you make that home purchase, before you sign that dotted line. My name is David Jellick, and I'm a local real estate agent here in the Melbourne, Florida area. And I've been in the real estate business for almost 40 years. I know the homes well, I know the area very well, and I've sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes. But there are some critical things that all buyers need to know about before they make that purchase here in Florida. And in this video, I'm going to go over 10 critical things that you need to be aware of before you do that. And we're going to get after it right now. So we're going to go over my 10 critical things you need to know about before buying property in Florida. And we're going to start with number 10 and work our way up to number 1. Number 10 is population growth and traffic. So Florida is growing at a rate of about 1,200 new people per day. And the reasons are obvious. The weather is great, generally a lower cost of living. Businesses are growing and coming to Florida every day because of the lower tax structure. This state is also income tax friendly with no state income tax. Whatever the reasons there are, people are flocking to Florida and they're coming in droves. So what does that mean? That means that generally traffic is going to be increased. Of course, it's going to mean more where the development is. So if you're coming down here looking for a property, just be aware there's some areas that are really growing fast, especially here in Brevard County in the Melbourne area. An area like Viera is just growing rapidly, very, very, very fast. New homes going up every day. So if you're going to buy a home in this area, and it's a very nice area, just know that you're going to be around construction traffic probably for 2, 3, 4, maybe more years than that. And you can just imagine that the traffic is going to get a little bit more heavy as the years go by. So there are still some very good rural areas here in Florida, and there's some very good rural areas here in the Melbourne area. But just be aware that the population is growing, the traffic's going to increase, and that's something that is a problem here in Florida. So these associations can be either through a condominium or through a homeowners association of single family or residential homes. And HOAs are very prevalent here in Florida, here in the Melbourne, Florida area. Neighborhoods that were built after 1985 are generally in homeowners associations where they have rules and they have fees. Neighborhoods earlier than that are generally not in homeowners associations. So before you purchase a property, whether you purchase a home or a condo, you need to know those rules of those associations, whether it's a condo or single family home, because there are rules that will affect your lifestyle, whether it's what kind of pets you can have, to what you can park in your driveway, to what kind of shrubbery and landscaping you can have, to what color you can paint your front door in your house, and whether you can have sheds in your backyard or whether you can have barbecues on your condo balcony. So you need to know so that you don't go somewhere and you can't do what you want to do. And a biggie for neighborhoods is a fence. Where a lot of people have dogs or pets, they want to have a fence in their backyard. Well, some associations don't allow fences, or they do allow fences, but they have to be a specific kind. So it is critical that you are able to review these HOA documents before you sign the dotted line. Now, a lot of times we will have that review during your due diligence period of when you're doing your home inspection, but these documents are usually available even before you make an offer. So again, it's critical that you know the rules that you have to play by before you sign the dotted line for a property here in Florida. So HOAs can definitely be a problem here in Florida. Termites. This is no surprise, I'm sure, to many, but if it is, termites can be a very big problem here in Florida. We always recommend, whether it's a cash transaction, whether it's a new home, old home, that you have your home inspected by a respected termite inspector. I'm not going to go into all the different kinds of termites here, but generally there's subterranean, which come up from the ground, and then there's drywoods, which fly around and can go anywhere. But obviously termites can be a huge problem, especially in older homes, especially in homes that are frame constructed, but they can get into any home, they can get into any wood in your house, and I have seen that over the years. So the good news, it can be corrected, but you definitely need to get your home inspected for termites before you close. Hey, my name is David Jelinek. I'm a local real estate agent here in the Melbourne, Florida area, and I've been selling real estate in this area for almost 40 years. I've sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes. I know the area very well, and I want to tell you the story about Melbourne, Florida. If you're considering a move to this area, please know that I know all the areas. I know the real estate, I know the homes, I know the processes, I know the things that you need to be aware of before you make a purchase here. Please consider hitting that like button, hit that subscribe button, click that little bell. That way you'll be notified every time we drop a new video just like this about Melbourne, Florida. And hey, I can't help you unless you reach out to me. Give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, and I'll be happy to help with your move to the Melbourne, Florida area. Red tide and river smell. These are two separate items. Red tide now is a oversaturation of harmful algae blooms. So these algae blooms are around all the time in the ocean waters and frankly in the river waters as well. But when there's an oversaturation, when there's a bigger concentration than normal, these harmful algae blooms will discolor the water, but they'll be very toxic to birds, ocean life, fish, and it'll kill them. It'll kill the fish, kill birds, and they'll wash up on shore, which creates more problems because then you got dead fish, dead animals on the beach, and then stench and everything else. So it's a very unsatisfying situation when a red tide happens. Frankly, it happens more on the west coast of Florida than it does on the east coast of Florida, but it does happen here on the east coast. I've experienced it many times. And to humans, it's a biotoxin that it's sore in your eyes, makes your throat sore. It's just a big irritant. So it hurts the economy, it hurts tourism because no one wants to go to the beach in this situation. So red tide is a problem for those going around the beach or maybe those living on an oceanfront condo or oceanfront home. River smell is a different feature. It happens in certain areas along the river. So predominantly in Brevard County in the Melbourne, Florida area, we have an easterly wind that blows towards the west. So when there's a situation when you have algae or seagrass or things like that get pushed on the west up to the coast there on the west coast of the river, the Indian River, the Banana River, in some areas that water doesn't circulate as much and the seagrass and other things will congregate in certain little coves and pockets, and it makes it for a very bad smell. So there's certain areas along the river that are known for the smell of seagrass and other things there. It's not 100% sure exactly what it is, but it's some biodegradable situation with seagrass and other plant life that creates a smell, and there's times it is just unbearable, just very tough to take. So again, these are a couple things that happen with the waters here around the Melbourne, Florida area that you just need to be aware of, and they can be a problem here in the Melbourne, Florida area. Aluminum wiring. So aluminum wiring became a substitute for copper in the 1960s and early 1970s. So any area in Florida that homes were built in this era, and certainly there were many homes in the Melbourne area that were built in the 60s and early 70s, may have aluminum wiring. So aluminum wiring, to go into briefly, has a problem, is a little more brittle than copper, and it actually turns out that the ends of the copper wiring is where a lot of times they become more brittle, they cause a little bit of sparking, and then subsequently some fires. So the solution for this is to either replace all the wiring, but a more economical and equally safe solution is to provide what they call alumicons, which is just some kind of pigtailing at the end of the wires so that they don't have this brittleness, they don't create a spark, they don't have an issue there at the outlet. So aluminum wiring can be a very big problem in Florida, not only for the potential fires, but the insurance companies won't insure you, or if they do, your insurance rate's going to be much, much higher with aluminum wiring without the alumicon pigtailing. So aluminum wires is something to look for and can be a big problem here in Florida. Cast iron piping and polybutylene piping. So cast iron piping has been used for many, many years in many different areas across the country as the water line and lines that distribute water throughout your home. So cast iron piping in general is designed to last 50 to 100 years. Well, in Florida, many times it doesn't last as long because of the heat and humidity, and sometimes in the front lawn, tree roots will get into it and crack it, so it becomes brittle. Many times after about 25 years or so, you'll start to see it starting to decay and have problems, and of course this is going to be a problem, especially if it's your main water line coming in, or if it's somewhere else in your house. It can easily start to deteriorate, start to clog up. You'll start to see your water maybe isn't draining as fast, or the water pressure is not as great. So cast iron piping can definitely be a problem in Florida, something that your inspector needs to look out for. It generally, again, it hasn't been used now in new homes since 1980. So if it's still in your home, it's time to have it checked, time to probably have it replaced. And having cast iron piping replaced in a home can be $15,000 to $20,000 or more in many residential homes. Now, there's some other techniques they can use today besides just replacing that piping. But again, cast iron piping can be a problem here in Florida. Now let's talk about polybutylene piping. So as cast iron piping was being phased out in the 70s, PVC piping became the piping of choice for the plumbing in your home. But another product, polybutylene piping, was also introduced in the 70s, and it lasted for about 20 years, but it found that this type of piping actually did not react well to chemicals that were in the water, such as chlorine and other chemicals, and it tended to break down this type of resin that was in this plastic piping called polybutylene piping. So it took them some years to figure out, but this ended up being an inferior product. So any polybutylene piping, and they are only installed as water supply lines in a home, whether it's to the house or to your water heater or to the sinks, that sort of thing. So again, as part of the home inspection, they need to look at your home to see if there's cast iron piping or polybutylene piping, because if those are in there, they need to be seriously considered to be replaced in your home. Polybutylene needs to be replaced, but cast iron piping also needs, at this point, at this age, needs to be considered to be replaced, because they are both a problem here in Florida. Do I dare say it? Mold. Mold can be a big problem here in Florida. So mold loves moisture and high humidity, and of course Florida has both. Mold is prevalent, of course, when you get sustained amount of moisture in an area that goes unchecked, and a lot of times this can happen behind walls when there's a small little leak in a plumbing area, or if there's a leak in the roof, it can happen up in an attic area. But the formation of black mold spores is what can be very unhealthy for humans, and so when you get a home inspection, it's very important for your inspector to check out and see if there's any moisture areas in the interior walls and exterior walls and in the attic and that sort of thing, in the bathroom and in cabinets. Good thing is that mold can be corrected, it can be cleaned out, can be dealt with, and make it a safe home again. But again, mold can be a big problem in Florida. Flooding. You probably noticed that Florida, for the most part, is flat, and Florida gets a lot of rain. And in the Melbourne area, that's no exception to that. So flooding is and can be a problem in the Melbourne area. Now, for neighborhoods that were built after 1985, 1990, we have a new system for water retention, and that was with just the culverts that lead out to lakes. The neighborhoods that were built, they built out lakes so that the water could then be pushed from the streets and the yards into the lakes. Prior to that, little canals were being used along the sides of homes or in the front of homes for water retention, and that wasn't as good. So they developed lakes, which has a dual purpose. It beautifies the community because you can live on a lake lot, and it's much more beautiful than backing up to somebody else's house or backing up to a small canal that sometimes may have water in it. So the neighborhood water retention and the water management for neighborhoods after 1985, 1990-ish, much better. But still, areas can be deemed by FEMA to be in a floodplain, and if you're in a floodplain, if you get a mortgage, you have to get flood insurance. Flood insurance is different from your homeowner's insurance. Homeowner's insurance will not cover rising waters. If your home or property is damaged by rising waters, it will cover if you get a leak through your roof through a storm, but not through rising water. So flooding can be definitely a problem here in Florida. You have to look at maps. You have to have an agent like myself that will tell you if flooding is going to be a problem. It can be more of a problem out in rural areas where they don't have as good of water retention. But again, we get a lot of rain here in Florida. Florida's flat. Wherever you decide to build or buy, you need to consider flooding, because flooding can be a problem here in the Melbourne area. So crime is my next topic. So yes, crime can be a problem. Crime, unfortunately, is everywhere. Here in the Melbourne, Florida area, Brevard County tends to statistically be lower crime rate than many areas around Florida, but crime can happen everywhere. So you can, depending on where you want to live, you can get crime statistics for the neighborhood or even the street that you want to live on. That is readily available through many different websites. But again, it's everywhere, unfortunately, and I do suggest people do their research on this topic when they're looking for a particular neighborhood or an area that they want to buy in. But again, it's worth mentioning that crime everywhere, and yes, it does exist here in Florida and in the Melbourne area. Crime can be a problem here in Florida. Okay, so the number one thing to be aware of before you buy property here in Florida is definitely insurance. So insurance has become a problem, a bigger problem here in the last 10 to 20 years, in my opinion. And the factors are numerous. So yes, we get hurricanes. Yes, there's damage. But for the most part, that's built into premiums and quotes that the insurance companies put out there. But the biggest thing has just been the fraud, the process by which claims are done, by handing rights over to the contractors that do the repairs. So that has become the biggest problem, where a lot of fraudulent claims were being done to homes that really didn't have the damage. So in short, a lot of times these companies will then sue the insurance companies to get claims done. The insurance companies don't want to spend money fighting it, so they do the claims. That's just got a short story to the summary as to what's going on in insurance. But property insurance is a problem in Florida. It's a problem here in the Melbourne area. Rest assured, you still can get insurance. It still can be had. It's just going to be a little more expensive than you probably expect. There is a statewide company called Citizens that's been in the business for about 20 years now. They're taking on a bigger and bigger share of the insurance policies here in Florida, and even they have gone up. Now, some of the big insurance companies like State Farm, Nationwide, they're no longer writing policies here in Florida, and many other companies have gone out of business because of the aforementioned reasons. So insurance is definitely a problem. Homeowner insurance is definitely a problem for you. You can still get it. You need an agent like myself that can help you through that process to find a good carrier that will take care of your needs. Car insurance is another issue here. So car insurance statistically here in Florida is about 10 to 20% above the national average. So you're gonna have to budget that into your budget as well and your numbers here before buying here in Florida. So bottom line, insurance, in my opinion, is by far the number one issue to be aware of before you buy property here. Know that what your monthly expense is going to be for property insurance and car insurance, and you'll be just fine. Again, get an agent like myself that can wade you through this process, and you'll be doing just fine.